Hey everyone, it's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today on the show, I've got my longtime friend, one of my best friends, definitely my best friend back in the day, Richard Pochert. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jerry.
Man,
First off, I want to congratulate you on your award for the innovation that you've done at the Fledge, man. It's impressive work, and I'm really proud of you.
well, thank you. And it's you and I were raised in the same vein, with wrestling and the Lansing School District and the Lansing back in the 70s and 80s. And I just think we were so lucky to have, I say Lansing raised me, and I think probably you think that in a lot of ways too.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, just so lucky and all of that to have been brought up back then. You and I were raised in the same vein.
Sorry,
I got a Lansing School District and the Lansing back in the 70s and 80s. Are you watching this on? We were so lucky to have, I say,
you're coming through
me, and I think probably you think that in a lot of ways too.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, just so lucky and all of that to have been. So I'm going to let Rich figure that out. When that's not playing anymore, Rich, we'll start again. So you got to close a YouTube window somewhere that you have on. So any luck with that? A lot of all right. Too.
Absolutely.
And try to close your tabs that have YouTube on, please. There's a lot of dead space happening. Sorry about that, guys. So, Rich, you got to come back on at some point.
All right.
All right.
Hang on. Start cam. Got it, buddy.
You're all good, man.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you for that.
We exposed me as a technical idiot. So that's a good way to start the show, man.
Well, you're on the phone. You're on a phone, I think, right?
No,
or are you on a computer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just had 2 windows open.
Yeah, but no problem, man. So why don't you tell us about you? I think we probably have some people from our old classes watching us and all of that. But why don't you tell the people who don't know you, where were you born and raised, and what brought you to wherever you're at right now?
Lansing did raise me, man. My parents both went to Michigan State. My dad grew up in the Thumb, and my mom actually moved there and met him when her father was traveling the country as an executive for a chemical company called Hercules Corporation. So they were up in Port Hope or Harbor Beach, Michigan. And he was in Port Hope, and they went to high school together and then state together, and then moved to Lansing and had my sister and I when they were pretty young, straight out of college. And it was a good time to be raised in Lansing. I grew up in almost entirely in the Groesbeck neighborhood, which is on Lansing's east side over by the Eastwood Town Center nowadays. Back in my day, it was all fields, but
yeah,
those were a good time, good place to hang out and play. But yeah, from there, man, I went to Pattongill. I attended Lansing schools, Post Oak, which was right by my house, Grand River Elementary, Cedar Street. So it was interesting because I was part of that forced integration that the government basically had to step in and force schools to integrate nationwide. And they did it with busing. So in 3rd grade, I lined up at the bus stop every day at Post Oak and was bused to Cedar Street, right across from Sukkot Boutique there in Lansing.
Yep.
So, and then I went back to Post Oak for the next year. And the following year, I went to Grand River Elementary for 2 years. And then I was a Mustang, and then Pattongill and Eastern. And I was kind of fortunate, man. I had a unique situation in that I grew up with a dad who was a coach and a teacher. My mom was a teacher and a librarian at the librarian.
Mean old Pat.
That's right. No, Pat's not mean anymore. She's chill.
We always were scared of her, though.
Of course we were. We should have been.
So, I just want to mention I went to Kendon and then got bused to Riddle, and that was in '76. And it might be important later. The Lansing School District lost a lawsuit and that forced them to do that. They didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Remember all of that?
Yeah. The northern schools had no interest in integrating, and which is where you would think that happened the most. But there was still redlining in Lansing. There were in Groesbeck. I still remember Fred Potter and his family and the Hendersons being some of the first Black families that were able to move into Groesbeck. And that redlining and that keeping Black and brown people out of certain neighborhoods and out of schools that were neighborhood schools in better neighborhoods has been detrimental and devastating. So yeah, they didn't want to ship kids out of their neighborhoods. Parents didn't want their kids leaving their neighborhoods and going across town to a different school with different kids. And it was a big controversy. A lot of houses in Groesbeck went up for sale in the years that busing started.
Yeah. And I remember those parents picketing and blocking the buses, and it was just weird to me, man. It was so weird.
Yeah, because you would really think, again, that Lansing was a more progressive northern town that would believe in abolition and be against that kind of racism. But Lansing, if you look at it, has its it really was even in our time. There was the West Side was heavily people of color, Black people. The North Side, there was a huge thriving Mexican community, Hispanic community. So it was interesting. There were pockets where there was still that separation, and that is still happening in our schools.
And being a refugee resettlement city.
Oh,
also, in our day, it was a lot of Vietnamese and Hmongs.
The Hmong students,
Yeah. And today, it's switched a little bit to Somalian and all that, but a lot of diversity.
It was a lot of diversity, man. And I feel fortunate. I really do, to have grown up in a diverse city where and in diverse schools where we didn't think about. I mean, in third grade, I was still innocent enough, and I had parents that were school teachers and said, we don't say the kinds of things you may hear in school about other people. We treat people the same in this household. You will not disrespect anybody. You treat them the way you're expected to be, you want to be treated. And I never thought about it. At third grade, I just made friends immediately. I didn't care what color they were, what accent they had, and that was what I think all through school we were like that,
Yeah. I mean, I can attest to that. I've been at your house so many times, and our team, we have a strong bond around our Lansing Eastern wrestling team. Yeah. I mean, Eastern means wrestling. That meant a lot to us back then. I say we were the last great team that the school had.
Point of pride. It was a huge point of pride of the school. And sadly, Jerry, what happened was that Lansing switched to the middle school model. Right around the time that you and I graduated. And that brought the 9th grade up into the high school, and they cut out middle school sports. And my dad had for years been a middle school teacher and coach and built those programs, youth programs that fed the high school. But when they switched, they took the middle school sports and just decimated them and turned them into intramural programs that were worthless. And so families that sought what we had in the 80s and the 70s, and that was youth programs with football and basketball and all kinds of things going on in parks and recreation all over the city, and sports programs in the junior highs, and then strong programs in the high schools. People went to the suburbs where they could find that. I mean, most of the people I went to school with now live in Grand Ledge and DeWitt, and that's kind of sad. They're not giving back directly to the community that raised them.
Yeah. And I have a call out there to everyone that lives in Grand Ledge and DeWitt. Come back. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, because I was in Grand Ledge for a long time, my wife and my family and I, and we got out of there. We came back. We're on the south side, and I'm got the Fledge on the east side, and love this neighborhood.
I lived in Colonial Village for a while on the south end, and I liked that area, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, Lansing's an interesting city because you have little pockets of areas that are super chill, and nice, and then you got areas that unfortunately are not taken care of. They're 80% renter occupied, like the neighborhood where the Fledge is. I was the principal at Bingham Elementary before they raised it and built a parking lot for Sparrow. But that was a huge anchor to the community you're in. I mean, 80% of the people that live in that neighborhood are renters.
Yep.
And they're not taken care of by their landlords at all. So you got dilapidated housing. You have no anchor to the community anymore because the school is gone.
What?
Okay. So, yes, exactly. The Fledge has taken that and filled that void. You really have, Jared. And I'm happy about that.
I'm just playing around with that. Let's go back to after high school. You graduated from Lansing Eastern. What'd you go do?
Yeah, man. After I wrestled, obviously, with you and all the guys, and that was the glory days of Eastern high school wrestling. And a lot of us ended up in college and having college paid for. Well, for me, wrestling paved the way to Princeton, and it allowed me. It opened doors that would have never opened up to a kid from Lansing, Michigan. Let's just put it that way. And those doors flew open, and it was a whole different world. I spent 4 years in New Jersey, in right between New York and Philadelphia, and wrestled at Princeton, and had some success in my sophomore and junior year. I was hurt in my freshman year and my senior year. So, but then I came back to Lansing, and I actually worked in banking because I was discouraged from teaching by my parents, who were both teachers and educators, lifelong educators. And they did not exactly encourage me to pursue education, which is sad, because who do you want teaching your kids? The brightest and the best. And the brightest and the best, I went to school with them. None of them were in the education program. I had 25 kids in my education program at Princeton out of 8,000 undergrads or 6,000 undergrads, 24. And one of them was Wendy Kopp, who started Teach for America. That was her senior thesis. Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book. I just finished a book called Utopia for Realists, where he talked a lot about the Ivy League people. They're going into bullshit jobs. They're out working for Robin Hood right now and screwing people. And creating complex financial things that people are confused, but it makes rich people richer. And it's just a bullshit job. And why isn't our Ivy League coming to teach? Can you imagine?
That would change the world. I mean, and really the mission of Princeton, its motto or statement is Princeton in the service of humanity. And what better service? What other job in this world touches the lives of kids and every kid out there and can shape their minds and get them thinking and free their minds, man. And that's not happening with our brightest and best. They're out trying to make a buck. I mean, they've paid $80,000 a year for an education, and they want to go out and make sure that education pays off.
Yeah.
But sadly, in countries like South Korea, yeah, South Korea, man, they pay their teachers like $85,000 a year to start, and then there's bonuses built in for performance.
Yeah.
You know, and they do an amazing job with their studies, and teachers are highly regarded with doctors and lawyers and other, you know, people in society. And that's the way it should be in America. It should be revered education.
So do you think if you and I said 1, 2, 3, name your favorite or the teacher that impacted you most, you think we'd say the same name?
Absolutely.
I think we would too.
Hugh Spag, man. He was he was Michigan Teacher of the Year, and he taught the AP English and Honors English, I think it was, or AP Lit.
And World Literature. I think he had that class. He changed my life. Hands down.
He's the reason I majored in English.
He's still mad at me. Well, is he still alive? He is, right? Sorry, Spag, if you're watching.
Yeah, sorry. We kind of lost touch.
But he got me into Columbia, and I didn't go.
Yeah.
And he was pissed.
I bet he was, man. That's his alma mater. He was a Rhodes Scholar, you know, at Columbia University, and came back to little old Lansing, Michigan, Lansing Eastern High School, a public, you know, 2,000 diverse kids in the middle of the inner city. And there he was. And he was an amazing teacher. He inspired kids, you know, like you and I, made us think.
That's it. And I want to start diving in there. Education. Yeah. Just education in general right now. Why should we even care about educating our kids? Is it so the insurance companies can have IT professionals, or the factories can have welders, or
the original idea behind education, public education, was that a educated society, an educated people would be a more civil society, a more civil people, and that they would become involved in their government, and they would be civil citizens and educated citizens. And that's the whole idea behind it. That's been lost. That's been lost in a sea of politics and curriculum guides, and they've forgotten about what's good for kids. So
we're losing you just a little bit sometimes on your internet signal, but trudge through that, okay? I don't know if you can tell. Everything's good though.
All right.
So right now, like I had an educator on a few days ago, and I asked her, who is the customer of public education? Like, who's the focus? Who are we trying to satisfy? What do you think that answer?
Satisfy anyone. I think we're trying to satisfy a goal for the common good, but we're not doing it. We're not approaching it in the right way. And you know, I don't know. It's really the customers, obviously the kids, but I don't know that, you know, we're doing the right things by the kids. And so the kids aren't responding. We're still deciding whether we should teach cursive writing. in school. And we're so far beyond that. The kids are circling around the teachers online. I mean, even in college classes, the teachers and professors can't possibly hang with the kids and their knowledge of technology. They're doing circles around them. They find it easy, but it shouldn't be that way. Teachers should be as savvy or more savvy technologically, media-wise, than their students. And that is not the case. Teachers are still teaching, chalkboards turn to whiteboards. Whiteboards turn to screens that project the computer screen. But nothing has changed. Kids are still sitting in rows, staring at the front, of the room, and the teacher's on the stage. And we've lost that connection where kids are getting their hands on things and putting education to work, and applying it and thinking for themselves. We've lost the vocational education aspect, which is an absolutely critical aspect that needs to come back. So there's just a lot of things that are, the system is broken and needs to be revamped. It's one of the oldest institutions, and it's slow to change, which is sad. It should be progressive.
If you could push a magic button and change one thing about education right now, what would you change?
I think, just like in this country, I absolutely believe there has to be a redistribution of wealth. If we're going to change things, we have to put wealth and economic power in the hands of people of color. That's all there is to it. It's not reparations. It's giving them a level playing field. And that has to happen in education too. We have to redistribute the wealth. The wealth is in communities like Bloomfield Hills, where it's $12,000 per pupil in state funding, pupil funding. In Lansing, it's $7,600. Now, how are they going to compete when those kids are the neediest kids, the absolute neediest kids? It's all upside down.
And then when you've got like school of choice, where I can take my kid to Grand Ledge if I can afford it, right? So then you got even more people abandoning.
Yes. And it draws away resources. But again, which families have the resources to leave the city and take their kids on a daily basis to Grand Ledge or Okemos or even East Lansing? They don't. Those families are living day to day. They're surviving. They're taking a bus to 3 jobs. They're loading their laundry on the bus and going to a laundromat. They can't haul their kids to a better school. They're stuck. And that's why schools of choice is bullshit.
Yep. We need to stop it.
Yeah.
We need to stop it.
And, Betsy DeVos, absolutely ridiculous. Never attended a public school in her lifetime. Never taught. Never an administrator. I mean, just, I could go on and on about her politics and vouchers and, wanting to funnel public funds into private schools and religious schools. Yeah, absolutely. She was a horror. Horror. I didn't say horror.
I think you did. Fuck that whore.
That's right.
Actually, I'm going to retract on that too. Because anyways, we'll keep moving on. So, redistributing the wealth, what does that look like? Every school gets the same per pupil? Does it break the property?
We need to turn it upside down, because the majority of the funding, just like defunding the police, you're not taking away police, you're just redistributing the wealth. You're taking from forces that are unnecessary, and you're redistributing that back into the community. And quite honestly, that's where everything needs to take place, is on a community level. The school that I had the most success with was in the middle of Lansing, in a small little community called Bingham, and those people were united around that school. And if we would have had a community police officer in that community that would have, lived in that community among the residents and patrolled the streets and the sidewalks and came to the school, if those kinds of resources were available, that would have made a world of difference, but instead those resources are funneled into areas where those kids in Bloomfield Hills, their parents went to college. They're getting read to from age, from the moment they come out of the womb. Their parents are reading to them and educating them. Well, that's not happening in the inner city. Many of those people are stuck and have struggled with education their whole lives. And so they get to a point where they can't push education on their kids because they struggled with it themselves. So it's just a downward spiral, a continual cycle of poverty and lack of education, lack of educational resources. So
do you think if we had more resource, so let's say that the Lansing School District, for example, had more resource, would they really know what to do with it? Is the institution so unhealthy that it doesn't know how to heal itself?
Yes, it is an unhealthy system right now. It's not progressive. It's way behind the times. It's antiquated. And to be quite honest, even the whole idea of having 2 months off in the summertime makes no sense for our modern society. We're not a farming agrarian society. Kids don't need to be in the fields all summer. They need to be in school. Those are the kinds of things that drove me mad as an educator, because you could see what needed to be done, and the wheels of power and control and politics just came grinding to a halt every time you had a new, fresh idea. So
is there a model that you look to that you really like? Like, I've got an answer in mind for me.
My kids went to, at least my stepchildren, went to a little school in Grand Ledge called Waukusta Elementary. And Waukusta was a community. It had no walls. Okay. It was a very unique school, in that not everybody there was well off. There's quite a few people in Waukusta that are rural poor. But then there are well-off kids, and so it was a good mix. But the lack of walls in that building allowed kids to freely move amongst each other, mentor each other, move between classrooms and grade levels depending on their interests, depending on their abilities and the things that they were strong in. They could go up to a 5th grade level instead of a 3rd grade level, and those kids remained friends for life. They graduated and they're still friends. Waukusta kids, they stick together, and they make lifelong friends. That's a model that I would like to see in all kinds of schools.
Yeah, and I have in mind the Finland model, where it's a lot of play. It's not any homework, no testing. They save that for way later. There's not really grade levels. The school is responsible for everybody. But the kids are responsible for each other. They teach each other, they mentor each other. And, I look out at our community, And I think, who are the mentors, who are the coaches, the teachers, the parents that can do this right now? And I want to make sure that everybody knows we would never bash parents here, because I mean, it's very, very difficult to get on a bus to go do your laundry. I mean, you're taking a chore that you should be able to do while you're doing something else, and now it's one thing, and it's going to take you hours and hours to do it.
People don't think about those things, Jer. I saw it firsthand when I was principal in that neighborhood, and I had to walk kids to school, and daily I had to remove lice and nits from kids, because again, if my kids came home with lice, I'd wash everything immediately in hot water, and I'd buy all the necessary things and products to get their hair taken care of. That couldn't happen. And so that was a continual problem. Kids would miss school because of it. So they'd fall behind even further. People just don't get that kids are stuck in a cycle of poverty and neglect, and education is not doing the job to pull them out. So
how many geniuses do you think we've lost to poverty in just Lansing?
Oh, talk about genius, and there's so much talent. I mean, of kids that we went to school with, bright, talented kids that have done so many cool things. And yeah, I think poverty and lack of opportunity has squashed the dreams of many, many kids. That, I mean, unfortunately, you can take some of those kids out of a situation where they're forced to deal drugs or whatever it is to survive, to steal or whatever they have to do to get by, to help their family survive. But you take them and put them up against a Princeton graduate in a business situation, and their practical knowledge of the streets beat the shit out of a Princeton grad. It's just not the same lingo.
I see it every day.
Yeah.
The side hustles,
day, right?
The side hustles in this neighborhood
they're
so entrepreneurial. They're so bright. I mean,
yeah.
How many people out there wish they knew something about Bitcoin?
Right.
In the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. Well, all these kids in this neighborhood got crypto down. They already know it. They know. It just amazes me how entrepreneurial they are, how innovative they are, yet the opportunities to use that entrepreneurial.
They need somebody like you.
Not trying to promote that.
And give them that venue, that opportunity to thrive, and you believe in them. I mean, there's very few people that show belief in kids in poverty, and they underestimate them.
Well, where I grew up. You came to that apartment before. You might have been there when they found bodies in the dumpsters before.
Hey, man. You had cable television and MTV before my household did. But no, you did. It was rough.
I need my MTV. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess I think about you and I, for example. We had good grades and we were athletes.
Right.
All right. That's a lot of privilege that comes when we were white. A lot of privilege that comes with that. And we did some shady shit.
Yep. Yeah.
Fair enough.
No question.
And we crossed some of those lines that you and I should not have crossed. Right. I mean, and if the color of our skin was different, it might have turned out different for us.
Yes. We wouldn't be where we are today. And I mean, I can say that just I had the extra privilege of having my dad at the same school and being my coach. And while some people may have thought that was a negative, it was a positive for me because it kept me in line. And I would have stepped over that line much further had I not had him there. So, you know, I mean, our lives could have taken a different turn, Jer, easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Yeah.
But we were lucky because
We were.
Lansing raised us.
That's right.
We had coaches, teachers, mentors, parents. You
Which
know,
is
I was from a broken house, but my dad was still involved.
absolutely he was.
And you know, I think we're bouncing around a lot here, but you know, we can't just go and fix the schools without going and not fixing, but supporting the families. I mean,
Right.
I think we have to completely revamp how education is done and why we're educating people. We're not educating you to get a job. We're, you know, Lennon was right. John Lennon was right. You know, what he wanted to be when he grew up was happy.
Yeah.
I
love
think
that.
we lost sight of that a long time ago.
Right. Right.
And
No, you have to be this, you have to be that. No, I want to be happy. And we don't guide kids towards happiness. We're driving them towards what we consider to be the goal. And that in our culture is making money. You know, that's not going to make you happy. We
yeah.
know that.
So all we're doing is training producers and consumers. And, you know, some people we're training to be better or bigger consumers than others. And, you know, that gap that we're creating with people gets filled with substances and violence and depression and suicide and all
Right.
the social ills. And it starts with the way we educate our kids.
I think it does. I mean, we have those kids in our hands as educators from the time they are 5 years old, you know, until they're 18. And that's a huge formative number of years. And they spend more time, more waking time in front of teachers than they do probably with their own families. So
Yeah.
we are shaping those kids. And unfortunately, the concept behind education that I talked about at the beginning of having an educated civil society and more civil citizens because they were educated has disappeared. You know, that's not the goal anymore. And it's not happening. We don't have an educated populace. You know, there's a lot of ignorance out there.
Yeah. And ignorance with people that are way more than capable of not being ignorant. And
Right.
we've just failed them.
Right.
Who has failed them?
You know, that's a tough one. The communities, you know, first and foremost, I think, are responsible for raising kids. But they can't do that without resources. And so, I mean, like you said, the way we fund schools, it's messed up. I don't know how we base it on property taxes. Well, the value of properties in the inner cities is not as high as the value of properties in the suburbs. So the suburbs continually get better funding than the inner cities. So that's a cycle of a broken system. So we don't change that until that gets changed. And that's a political problem, you know, and the politicians, you know, they've gotten a hold of education. We've gotten so far away from the community raising kids like we were raised, you know, and that's just, especially in the inner city, that's broken down. But it's broken down not just because of the schools, it's broken down because of poverty and crime and all those things that go along with poverty. So it's I don't know which aspect of education has failed. It's hard to put a finger on that. It's failed on all levels.
Well,
and that's sad to say as somebody coming out of 30 years of education.
yeah, I think that, when we say education, we think school, we think the Lansing School District, we think, the Department of Education or whatever, but it's homogenous in our life, right?
Right.
I mean, it has to be. I ask everybody out there watching, what are you doing to educate other people?
Right.
And it's not just kids anymore. I mean, we've got to teach people to want lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning.
The future depends on it for you. If you don't know how to learn, and if you don't continue to learn, your job will be obsolete, or the company you started might be obsolete.
What's an interesting figure and fact is that when we were kids, we were expected to change jobs maybe 5 to 7 times average in our lifetimes. The generation before us averaged 2. The generation after us averages 14 to 20 job changes in a lifetime. So they have to, in order to survive, they have to learn to think for themselves and adapt. We're not teaching them to do that.
Right. So it might be better to teach somebody how to be agile than it would be to teach somebody how to use a spreadsheet or how to use a calculator.
I'd say those things are actually critical, but it might be more advantageous than teaching them about Shakespeare. And that comes from an English teacher.
But
not necessarily, because he teaches universal concepts that are important for kids to think about because it relates to their lives. I know that I can say that as an English teacher, but there's certain things you and I know that we never use in our lifetime. Remembering facts about the Civil War and the different battles and the dates of those battles, that's never going to serve a purpose in our life. That class should be replaced with practical things that, how kids deal with credit, how to deal with credit cards, how to deal with college loans, how to get into college, how to write college essays, all that. They get none of that.
I think they should get both. Now I'm back on your side with Excel and how to learn or to be agile, or the history is important. Strategies like that is important. Who was there? Who was really there? Is important. I want to put out. We talked about school funding, and Sean, who is a huge supporter, and I appreciate her so much. All schools should be equally funded, but how do you accomplish this? How does that happen?
See, that's the key. And I don't know, honestly, I'm not sure they should be equally funded. I think we need to turn it on its head. If we're going to continue to have kids on an island stuck in poverty in the inner cities, then we're going to have to throw resources to pull them up and out. And I mean, that is only going to happen if we turn the way we fund schools on its head. Right now, we base it on property taxes through Proposal A. And again, that doesn't work. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. I don't know exactly how you fund them differently to get the resources where they need to be, but that's where they need to be.
Yeah. So is there something that you do every day, even now? Because you're retired, basically, right?
Yeah.
What's something you do every damn day to help educate, protect, fight for these kids?
Damn day I try to learn something new, man. I am a lifelong learner, and that's super important. I read a lot. I try to work with kids still through an advocacy business that I run. I help with families and students that don't know how to navigate the educational system and don't know the rules, don't know the little hidden codes and things that the school district doesn't tell you if you're not in the inside. And I help them with IEPs, special education plans, 504s, which help with kids that have significant things that get in the way of their learning. So ADHD, things like that. But these are, again, people that don't know how to successfully navigate the system as it exists and how to play it. You know, because you almost do have to play the system to come out of it successfully.
Do you think, and I'm going to throw something that Sean said again up here, do you think that the system loves the ignorant? I mean, they need the ignorant. They need the people to not have the education. And when I say ignorant, everybody, I don't mean like people are stupid. I mean that we're failing them in their education.
Right. And do they leverage that ignorance? Absolutely. People in wealth and power, they want to maintain that wealth and power. And do they want us to make $15 an hour minimum wage? No, which is sad. I mean, there should not be a billionaire class. Who needs $1 billion, Jerry? What do you do with that? It makes no sense. That's why I think a redistribution of wealth and knowledge has to take place in this country. You know, again, turning the economic situation on its head, just like the educational system on its head. It's what has to happen. But are people willing? You know, leveraging ignorance, you can see how Trump leveraged ignorance and where that led. That's not a civil society. That wasn't the goal.
You're walking right into what Sean's saying over there. But this is also a lead into my guest from yesterday, James Saylor, who has the Lifeboat Network Center, which is a recovery place. He wanted me to ask you, what do you see are some steps we could take to make the economy good for everybody? Because we see the stock market, we see this GameStop thing, and we see these cryptocurrencies or whatever. But at the end of the day, you know, the GDP and the stock market don't represent how well the East Side is doing.
No, the regular people, the Main Street people, as they call us, I don't play the stock market. It takes money to make money. And this whole idea that money's going to trickle down to us, it doesn't happen. People sit on their money. Their money works for them. They don't spend it. They pass it down from generation to generation. And the money works for them. It makes money on top of money. They just sit and make interest. You don't have to work at it. That's not happening for poor people and middle class people. We're living paycheck to paycheck. And you know, we're on the verge of collapse all the time. And so leveraged ignorance is important for the people that want to maintain wealth and power. You know, it's again, it's something that has to be flipped in our society. We have to bring wealth and economic buying power and economic power, business ownership, and things into the inner cities, and we have to diversify. That's going to be the ability for our society to diversify and to accept the diversification and to deal with poverty. That's going to be what defines us as a society, whether we succeed or not.
Yeah. We're not doing too well right now.
No, we're ill. We're broken. So,
oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, I wish I had some answers. I have a lot to say about what's broken, but having the answers was one of the things that drove me out of education after 30 years and I retired. Frustration with the ability to change what was happening and what I could see clearly needed to happen. So
You weren't happy, Sisyphus?
Sisyphus was not happy rolling the rock up that hill.
Yeah. There you go, Spag. You taught us one thing at least.
Amen, man.
So
I still have that quote book.
I do too. I still have mine. It's right up in my office.
That's awesome.
So funny. So tomorrow on the show, I got Paul. He's from New York, and at least I'm pretty sure he's from New York, and he is. We're going to talk about being a gay unemployed waiter, and what I'd like to know is what question would you like to pass to Paul?
I'd absolutely like to ask Paul, since we've been talking about education and a broken system and an antiquated system and a system that doesn't embrace diversity, as a gay unemployed waiter, how did he feel America's public educational system failed or helped him succeed?
I absolutely love that question, and I always kind of flip this to my guests too. Whatever question that they ask me, I'm going to ask them. But let me ask you this a little bit different. When you, as an educator, as an administrator, or a teacher, was there a safe way? Was school safe for gay and queer kids?
No, it never has been. No, it's not safe for kids that are different. Kids that wear tails weren't safe at Grand Ledge. They were picked on mercilessly by their peers. And they were some of the smartest, brightest, nicest kids I've ever dealt with.
Yeah. I had Trevor Devine on the show a few weeks ago, and he's such an amazing person. I
had him in 8th grade when I taught at Hayes for a couple years. I hated teaching middle school, dude. The worst job in education. I call middle school the black hole of education in our culture. It's awful. And Trevor was in my class. It was a zoo. Let's just put it that way. It was a zoo. But Trevor was a smart, nice kid, man. I always enjoyed him.
Yeah, he's great. So, this to me is a great conversation. It might not have all of the solutions and stuff like that, and we never said that we were going to sit here and try to do that, but it is a good, we can do better. We have done better before.
Oh, absolutely.
Still there with me?
Yeah, he froze up a little. But yeah, no, we have to do better, Jerry. I mean, I think we're failing generations of kids right now. And we can do better, man, as a society. We've got models.
Decides to go out.
You on? You there?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I mean, we have models out there of success. The problem is none of those models is quite like America. The diversity isn't there. They're homogenous societies. They're all white and they're all focused on a national priority. Their priorities are the same. But America's not like that. We have huge diversity that has to be dealt with. That has to be, in whatever solution we come up with, we're going to have to deal with the issue of diversity in this country and how we bring equity within.
I've really had an epiphany right now that Finland model can't just be plopped here. I've always known that, but I've always thought it's a good model. We should do something like that, but we have to restore equity. We have to not even restore, we have to create equity. There never was equity.
Right.
And very good point, man.
Yeah.
Very good point. Richard, I love you. I
love
love
you
having
too,
you on this show. You want to take us out with anything? Is there any last thought or anything that you want to?
I appreciated the conversation, man. I love to talk about education. I come from a family of educators. My wife is, she's been an educator for 30 years. And so I'm all about education. But I'd love to see some of the solutions, and I'd love to be a part of the solution. So I'm going to continue to keep an eye on your activities over there on the east side of Lansing and see how I can get involved.
I would love that. You got to come home, man. You got to come back. Hey, we should probably give a shout out to Connor, man.
Oh yeah, my son Connor. I'm so proud of that man. He just got accepted at U of M, and that's the first college that he's received acceptance at. He applied at 8 different colleges, so he wrote like 17 different essays as a kid. I felt sorry for him, man. He had 3 different people, adults, telling him to rewrite and edit, drawing red lines, but no, it paid off, man. I'm so proud of him. U of M, he's he can't go wrong, right?
Yeah. And he just won a state championship with DeWitt football and all of that stuff.
He's had a great week, man. He had an interview with the Alumni Schools Committee representative at Princeton this week, and his girlfriend got into U of M. So, I mean, we couldn't ask for him to be in a better spot as a 17-year-old about to turn 18. I'm happy for him.
Yeah. And I also want to, just one other quick shout out is you may have seen Sunny on the show before, and Sunny, was she said that school kills artists. That was one of her paintings that she had. And Sunny is your daughter as well. So shout out to Sunny as well.
Proud of Sunny as well. She's a junior, she's 16, going to be a senior next year. And she's handling this whole pandemic thing pretty well, but man, it's tough. It's been isolating. And I just want to see them get back in school. Yeah. But she is an amazing artist, and I want to see her continue with that art and take it places that she never thought she could go.
You might not know this, but we exchanged an email today, her and I did, and hopefully she's going to come over and display her art at the Fledge here soon.
Awesome.
So we keep flickering. So anyways, anything else you want to say?
No, just it's been a pleasure, man. And again, congratulations on your award. You deserve it. Keep up the good work in Lansing, man.
Thank you so very much.
All right.
And it's been a pleasure with having you on too. So everyone, tomorrow, unemployed gay waiter, Paul, and we will see you later.
Peace.
You know how to sign?